on Facebook, and we're also live on KTN. And Ndoko and CT Muga with you this morning. Our guest host also, one name, Lucia. I've decided it will be one name.
There are people who actually combine the two of them and they call me Luciella.
Let's do that.
Okay, Luciella. We've heard you.
Yeah. It's not difficult to figure out those things. That one we do. All right. Our guest host for the hour is the Executive Director of UMA Action. And using voices for change, absolutely, and joins us through the Situation Room this morning. The hot seat is occupied already this morning, coming few minutes after 8 o'clock. For the first time in the Situation Room on Kenya's Biggest Conversation, His Excellency Dr. Wilber Hasilwa Otichilo. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine and I'm happy for the first time to be in this studio.
Thank you very much for honoring our invitation and for being here this morning. For those who do not know, or for those who've been asleep, or for those who don't live in Kenya, or for those who don't live on the planet, His Excellency is the governor, second-term governor of Vihiga County, and joins us this morning to have a conversation, devolution, and looking at what has happened over the last 10 years and what hopes are in store for the next 5 in devolution. The country heads to Wasingishu County this morning, starting for the 8th Devolution Conference that takes place from tomorrow until Friday, to have conversations about how the devolved units will function over the next 5 years under this new administration. And even as we get into those conversations in Eldoret this week, the conversation in the room this morning is around the CIDPs.
Yes.
And to find out what exactly those have in store for counties moving in. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana. To welcome you properly,
Yes,
to the show, CT Muga has today's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. By progression, the direction we normally take with our proverbs, I was going to go to the southern part of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But I was drawn to the turmoil that is now visiting the western part of this continent. And I thought that perhaps relooking at some of the proverbs that come from that country might give us an inkling as to how it is they view the world and how it is they go about their business. Now, the capital of Niger, as you all know, is Niamey. And as you also all know, they recently had a coup.
yeah.
A successful one, meaning the military actually took over. Oh, they attempted coups that don't work. We've had them in this country once, but this one actually worked. Okay. The proverb. Only a medicine man gets rich by sleeping.
Okay.
How?
Well, we're going to ask you what you
Mheshimiwa is
think.
asking how, so let's ask you, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
How do you?
How?
You are rich by just sleeping?
Only if you're a medicine man.
If you are a medicine man.
Medicine man, yes.
Yes.
Now, it is a broad spectrum. You could be a rainmaker.
Yeah.
Mheshimiwa would be familiar with that term.
Yes, I'm very familiar with
Yes.
rainmakers because I come from a county where.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you are one.
Yes, I come from that clan.
His ancestors were rainmakers.
My ancestors were rainmakers, and they are still those who are there who still believe they can make rain come down, or they can stop rain.
From coming down.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about these medicine men who are making money while they sleep?
Well, I think to be able to be asleep and be rich, it means that here is somebody who may be just using his ingenious way of doing things by just telling people, I can do this, and people believe that he can do it, and they'll pay him or her for services that you may not be able to know whether you receive the services, or if they don't, you will be still told that you didn't receive it because something else happened. Yeah. So I think is, in my understanding, we hear people who make money without doing much, without doing anything, but they are so ingenious in the way that they convince others to believe in them.
The master invigilator.
Well, my colleagues keep comparing these proverbs to an exam, and so I'm asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how has someone done? You've gotten 10 because we want your opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what you've given us.
So, I mean,
There's no right or wrong.
what's more to
There's
it?
no right or wrong.
You cannot possibly be wrong
Yeah.
in interpreting a proverb.
Yeah.
Well,
So
If the shoe
any
fits.
answer is a good answer.
Everything
good
is a good
answer.
answer. Yes.
Is a good answer.
well done, Governor. So now, with questions that may not receive a well done, as we're going into conversations about devolution, we're seeing stories before we even get into the CIDPs and getting into this week and seeing the conversations that are going to be had in Eldoret about what will happen over the next 5 years for devolution in this country. The representatives of the devolved units, being county executives, governors, will be there having these conversations.
Yes.
There will be those interested parties who are discussing what counties need, whether they need that on an individual basis, or whether they will be working in concert for what will happen. The stories that we see today are very grim. One of them being that counties over the last 10 years since devolution has been in practice, because we know that devolution was written into the Constitution in 2010. It did not start until 2013, really. But since that time, that number one, revenue targets have never been met by any devolved unit. We've had units that have done well, but targets have never been met. The development index has not been reached yet. Are we being too ambitious, or are we saying that there's a problem here? If you were to give an overview of devolution across counties, if you did a bird's eye view, what does it look like for you?
Thank you for that very interesting but very important question. First and foremost, I want to say that devolution is the best thing that has ever happened to this country. And in the last 10 years of devolution, we have witnessed a lot of development across the country. Although this has not been quantitatively documented, but I can tell you that what has been achieved in the last 10 years is what we failed to achieve in the last 50 years of independence. And I would want to say that devolution has brought equity, which was not there before. Before, you may recall, we used to have what we used to be called district planning committees. And those committees were chaired by the district commissioner. And he was the alpha and omega who decided where any development goes. And it were politically, biased. And particularly if you had politicians who came from those areas who opposed the government, they will never get any development. But devolution, despite of political affiliation, we are having an equitable sharing of revenue. But what I want to say is that 15% is so little compared to the 85% that remain at the national level. And one of the biggest challenge I would want to really highlight that has led down to not accelerated positive outcomes of devolution is that the functions have been devolved, but the functions have not been followed with the money. You find that the 15% that is supposed to come to the counties, if you compare with the overall revenue of the country, you find it's only 15%. And if you calculate for the last 10 years, we rarely hit 15%. It's been around 9 to 13%.
Where does the rest of it go? Where does the rest of it go?
Well, because of the issue of audited accounts, some of the accounts have never been audited for a long time. So for that reason, you find that we are still using audited accounts of 5-6 years ago, and yet the revenue the country is collecting is higher. So I would want to say that despite of everything, devolution has made a significant impact to this country at the county level. And some of the counties that were so, I would say in quotes, so backward in development, there's a lot, particularly if you take the northern Kenya counties, where we didn't have many facilities like health facilities. Today you can hear they can now do operation or patients in Wajir, in Mandela, in Moyale, which was not there before.
Governor, you said just a few months ago that, I mean, even as you talk about these challenges, not 15%, not quite 15%, maybe a little bit more needed from the budget. But a few months ago, you said that the one thing that would ground devolution in this country is corruption.
Yes.
Why?
I said this because, corruption, is like let's start at the national level. I must say that one of the biggest problem that has, stopped this country from moving forward is corruption at the national level. And corruption is probably the biggest challenge we may be having in this country. And as a result of devolution, it is true that to quite a big extent, corruption has also been devolved in many sectors at the county level. And if we do not take a very strong position to fight corruption, then corruption is likely again to make our dream of having the counties not progress because most of the resources will end up not in the right hands, not in the right development programs.
If I may, Governor, I am trying to be very polite today so that the village elders back at home don't come for me in the evening the way they came for Mercy Tarus.
Yeah.
The county governments are all in Uasin Gishu.
Yes.
Where we currently have the Finland scholarship saga.
Yes.
Corruption is involved in that one.
Correct.
Has any of the other 46 governors called out the governor of Uasin Gishu, the former governor of Uasin Gishu, who's now the senator, who's supposed to be oversighting the mistakes he did in the previous time? We cannot say we are fighting corruption when we are not holding each other accountable. I expect all the governors in Uasin Gishu County to hold Uasin Gishu County accountable for the monies that these families have lost. Because I know I am a person who has an undergraduate degree. I did my undergraduate in Kabarak University. And I saw the sacrifice it took for my parent to pay my school fees. And it was not pretty. It was not pretty watching your parent struggle like that just to give you an education. And I can understand how those parents are feeling. And you're a parent.
Yes.
If someone swindled you your money that you were to pay school fees for your children, how would you be feeling? And if we are going to stop corruption, then we need you leaders to start holding each other accountable. Why is it so difficult for the rest of you to just stand and say, the governor of Uasin Gishu and your entire county government, we need answers from you as your colleagues? Why is that so difficult? Why is it so difficult when our president says next week we are going to be buying unga ya mahindi at 150 shillings? 3 months later, we are buying the same maize meal for 250 shillings. And none of you have stood up and said, Mr. President, you said 2 next week. 3 months ago, it's 3 months down the line. Our people are suffering. You are our voices. You are supposed to be representing us. But most of the time when you talk, we don't feel represented. And if there's a Kenyan out there who feels represented when the person they elected speaks, raise your hand.
Lucia,
I will wait.
This is you being polite.
Yes.
Okay.
Very. Actually, very.
Okay.
You know,
Okay, so maybe Mheshimiwa can address that.
Answers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really understand you, and I really feel how you are feeling, and even those students, how they are feeling because of what happened. But as governors, we find ourselves in a catch-22 situation, whereby, as a governors, we are actually managers. We are supposed to manage the counties in terms of leadership and in terms of development. So we, as much as we would like to come out very clear and condemn and ask answers to this unfortunate situation that has happened in Uasin Gishu, we find ourselves in a situation where we need to be able to discuss together and find, here is a colleague. And therefore, it's not very easy to put an agenda to discuss one of your colleagues. But what I would say is that the key, if you look in terms of the leadership system in our country, the key people who would raise this are our parliamentarians, our MCAs, because that is their role. Their role is oversight, representation. Mm-hmm. So I would, while I agree with you that one way or so we must find a way to reprimand ourselves or to be able to, gauge ourselves and say, look, we are together, we are a family, and we cannot allow this to happen. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we are also finding ourselves in a very tricky situation. This matter happened when one of our colleagues, who has now exited from being a governor, was there. Mm-hmm. Now, the person who is there now is a new governor, who I would say he's so innocent. Innocent in the sense that he has inherited a problem which he was not part and parcel. So that's why, as a Council of Governors, we have left that matter to be handled at the county level. But in case it reaches a level where we as a Council of Governors will be able to be required to intervene, then we'll do so.
Yeah. So, can we? Even as we talk about the inheritance of issues here, and then coming back and looking at what's happening this week, crucial conversations being had this week about what counties plan. Devolution 10 years ago is something that did not exist, obviously, in Kenya before, and now we're looking at units of the country which may not have seen development as quickly as they had if devolution did not come into play. The CIDPs are vital for the next 5 years. It's essentially the plan that each county will have for development over 5 years of an administration. Implementation of these plans seems to be the bottleneck that most counties face. Whether it is budgets, whether it is activities around county budgets, whether it is implementation activities then around these plans. What would you say is the problem? Why these CIDPs oftentimes don't come from plans to activities to then actual implementation? What's the problem?
Thank you for that good question. CIDPs, or County Integrated Development Plans, are required every 5 years after election to be prepared in a participatory manner through public participation. And that, after that is done, that forms now the blueprint of development agenda for each of the counties. And once that is been formulated, it is expected to be implemented. And the implementation requires resources. So there are many options of resources. The main resource for counties is the shareable revenue, which we receive from the national government through Treasury and approved by control of budget. One of the key areas of concern that has led to implementation slowing down is the disbursement of funds from Treasury to the counties. That has always been a problem, and it's a common knowledge that every time you have had governors, threatening that unless money is given, is released, we may ground down our activity. So that is one of the key areas of concern. Why some of the CADPs projects are not implemented. But the other is that we also project a collection of revenue from the wananchi, from our people. But when it comes in the actual collection, you find the revenues are always below the targeted in amount. So you end up actually collecting very little money, and therefore you cannot implement the projects. And that if you had already started the projects and then you don't collect what you projected to collect, then you end up with these famous pending bills. And that's why you have had many counties have pending bills, because they projected they will collect the money, and therefore they went ahead and implemented the projects. But at the end of the year, they didn't collect. So,
Excellency, we have to. This is a question we have to ask.
Yes.
When we're looking at the newspaper headlines, what you're saying came up.
Yeah.
How is it that this is a continuum? Projections are never actualized. It's a continuum. So, what is it? Do you overproject? Do you undercollect? Or do you actually collect, but what is remitted and what is recorded is not what was projected? Which is it?
I think it's a mix of all what we have said.
I was expecting you to say that.
You have a follow-up question to that?
Yes, I do. I was waiting for him to say that. I can now ask him the real question I actually wanted to ask him.
Can we take a break and then you can ask the follow-up question?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break on that. It's 29 minutes to 9 o'clock. And even as we take a break, as we have this conversation on devolution and the counties with His Excellency Governor Otichilo from Vihiga County, I'm going to remind you that October 29th is the day when the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon will take place. It's the 20th edition. For 20 years, people have been coming together from around the world to run, and to run for a good cause. And in this case, it's for the future makers, to say that a child gets an opportunity to go to school. A child gets an opportunity to look towards a future that they wouldn't ordinarily have. It's for those who live with disabilities, and it's with those who wouldn't get another shot at life. So, www.nairobimarathon.com, 2,000 shillings. Register and start training today and take part in the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon on the 29th of October. All right, let me remind you also that all roads lead to Nakuru County on the 26th of August for Choma Nangoma. Radio Maisha is taking this party out into Nakuru County for the first time. Fantastic artists will be in store for you. Great performances. Nachoma Nangoma on the 26th of August this month.
I'm unavailable and no they see me. Put your hands up in the
Catch Amplify every weekday from 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. only on KTN Home. Calling all expenses.
My name is Isaac Tapasian. I'm the current manager at Rap Republic. Here we wrap cars. You bring your car, we make it beautiful. When you put wrap on a body of a car and you remove it, the paint remains intact. Nothing good comes cheap. In the long run, cheap is expensive. So you'd rather go expensive, and in the long run, it will be cheaper for you.
To be the foundation on which political careers are built, giving people handouts. And yet, from everything I've heard, Dr. Otichilo does the complete opposite, doesn't give people money. Now he's governor. It means the people of Vihiga were happy not to be given money. There's actually no other interpretation. And he's not a one-term governor. So it means he has not been giving out handouts, and yet he's been elected again. Now, what is it that makes the job of a governor difficult? That really is my question. Because as an MP, one would assume the responsibilities are less.
Yeah.
As governor, you cover much larger area, more constituencies. What makes the job of a governor difficult?
Thank you for that question. What makes the job of a governor very difficult is expectations. The expectations are very high. And there is this perception that has been ingrained in people that, the governor is the one who handles all this money. He is the one who says where the money should be spent, who should get and who should not, which is not the case, because the money for expenditure in the county has to go through a budgetary process, which is well clearly defined in the Public Finance Management Act. So the biggest problem many governors face is that they become part, or they succumb to that perception that you must provide, you must, when people come to you, you must do what they're having to make them happy. But that's one area I've said no. I've said we know the process, how the money in every county is procured, how the budgeting process is done, and that's the procedure to be followed. And there's no other, any extra money as a governor I get that would be said that this one you can use for giving out to your friends or people who are in a problem. No. Whatever I get my salary. And my salary is meant to take care of me. So I clearly, blindly tell my people that, look, I do not have any extra money from anywhere.
So your second term in office,
Yes.
Governor, what would that look like? So there's certain factors here that many would say would be a monkey on your back, right? So it's your final term that you're in now.
Yeah.
According to the rules, this is it. You also then have been recognized in on the continent, interestingly enough, as a man who gets a job done. All right, with those awards that we saw earlier in the year. What do you hope to achieve? Especially also now that we're coming at a time where the plans for the counties are being made. What do you hope to achieve? What would it be that you want to leave behind, Vihiga?
My dream, and I hope it comes true, my dream for Vihiga County, and by extension, if it can happen in the 47 counties, my dream is to put a very solid governance system. Because I think one of the biggest problems we have in this country, even at the national level, and to extension at the county level, is weak governance system. So my dream for this period is to really make sure that I have a strong governance system in place. And to have strong governance system, we must have proper policies on each of the sectors. We must do proper legislation, which are very, are in line or in tune with what we expect. And then we need also the perception of our people to change. So in the governance system, we need to focus on transparency and accountability, which is the biggest problem we have. Because most people go into the civil service because they think that there is an easy way to make money. So accountability and transparency is something that needs to be reinforced. And to do that, I believe if performance contracting was done properly, we would see a lot of efficiency in service delivery. Second, if we had a proper system of reprimand for those who make mistakes or those who attempt to subvert the system in terms of transparency and accountability, they should be punished. But unfortunately, some of the laws we have done or we have made, they have made it even very difficult. Like we have this law of fair administration of justice. It's a good law. It assumes an ideal life where people are able to follow rules and regulations. But when you, in real sense, you find that people don't follow that. So when you want to punish somebody who has done a mistake, let's say you want to reprimand, if you have they say you must follow so many stages. And if you don't, the person goes to court and is returned back. So those are some of the laws that we need to re-examine. But for me, if you fix governance in our counties, the rest will work. Because if you fix governance, it means once the budget is done, the CIDP has been done, the annual work plan, which is derived from the CIDP, has been done, and you say, this is your job, you are the minister, you are the principal secretary, in our case we call them chief officers, these are the projects you are going to implement. I sign a performance contracting with you and say, this is what you do, and every quarter you must report. If that works, things will work seamlessly. And where there is a problem, it will be clear. The person would say, I was not able to implement this because probably the money was not released or something was happened.
But it seems to me that we have to, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Governor, but it just seems as though we then have to prescribe again upon what should have been an understanding, clear in the minds of everybody what they're supposed to be doing. The assumption is that if you ask, because you're not sitting in your house and somebody says, person X, come and apply for this job to be chief officer in Vihiga County, you offer yourself up. Somebody may recommend you, but then you acquiesce to that and you say, yes, I will. For the greater good of the county, I will do this job. But we seem to have to want to coax people to do their job. We seem to want to have to coax folks to say, okay, please don't steal the county's money. You know, as though you didn't know that it is what is required of you or it is what is not required of you. But why do we, at this level of government, still have to want to beg people to do their job?
There is a culture in this country where people who are very qualified, they apply for a job, and when they get the job, once they are in the job, they don't want to do what the job requires them to do. So there is a culture in this country where people believe, and particularly in public service, is a place where you just go and sit around and you can make your quick money quickly, and you can be able to not even come to job. You don't report to work, but you will be paid. There is a culture where, and this is a very serious culture, where now, and I hope the current government, I'm in the government, so I'm also implementing the same. This question of people just spending time in seminars and workshops. I can tell you, we spend so much time, so much money in seminars and workshops that end up with just piling recommendations that don't.
That's very scary because as we speak, people are all roads lead to Eldoret.
Yes.
All roads lead to Eldoret today for a 4-day conference meeting seminar to make plans for things that you're saying will not happen.
You know,
isn't that scary?
Yeah. So that's we spent, and if you check in the government systems, most people, even simple meetings that you would just sit. I'm impressed by the way your sitting arrangement here. I'm very impressed. I wish I could do that in Vihiga, where everybody sits the way you sit here. But you know, you find that even simple meetings where people would just decide to sit in one room and discuss, you find they have to go to a hotel.
Governor, I have a question.
Yes,
we've had a problem of continuity of development projects. I wouldn't even say it's in this country alone. I think it's in the entire continent. So this administration comes, they start doing this. The next administration comes, that one did not end with the project, so they stop there. They start doing something else with the CIDPs. The ones that you've put in place for 5 years, is it meant to be something continuous so that when the next governor comes in, you know, like it's a bigger picture for Vihiga County? Or will the next governor come in the next election cycle and go like, now what former governor was doing was for former governor, now me, I want to do things for me?
Ideally, the way this was structured in the County Government Act is that it's supposed to be a continuum. A CIDP is not a creation of the governor in place. It's a creation of the people. So when we go during the CIDP formulation process, it is people who say what they want in their respective areas, and that is captured, collated together, and that's what forms the CIDP. So ideally, even after the term of the governor is over, the governor who comes in should continue, and should not start any new projects until the old projects are completed. And common sense tells us so. Why would you want to start a new project when the old one that was started and probably you only need to just put a little money in it and finish? So that's what happens. But again, as you rightly said, when the culture in this country is that, when new leadership come in, they forget and all what the other leader was doing and say, I'm going to do my own. And that's some of the biggest problems why we have so many stalled projects.
Do you think that the responsibility of these stalled projects or the accountability index having not been reached should fall squarely on the shoulders of the county executive being governors, for example? If we go through all the trouble, I mean, it's not easy work to come up with a CIDP.
Yeah.
Yes,
it is a lot of work.
Yes.
There are people who work under the county. They're the clerks and the researchers who are running around doing all of these things. They're looking at the implementation matrices. They're looking at all of these things. And then we come and we whittle it down to maybe a delay from the National Treasury.
From Treasury, yeah.
Which for me cannot always be the reason. So a question that my brother here asks all the time is, okay, the little that they gave you, what can we see that you actually did with it? 2 to 3 weeks ago, we saw cabinet secretaries under the auspices of the president sign a contract, essentially saying that if I don't do this thing, I can go home. Essentially, that's what you're saying.
Correct.
Do you think that that kind of responsibility ought to be placed on the shoulders of the county executives? Because if it doesn't happen, 10 years, we can say, okay, fine. We gave it a little bit of time to crawl, grow teeth, now start to gnaw on hard food. But after 10 years, surely something must have happened. Do you think county bosses should take responsibility if we do not see a certain level of development taking place in the counties?
Exactly. That's why I said that in terms of governance, it is mandatory that at a county level, the chief officers, the CEC members should be placed on performance contracting. And I'm happy that I've set a stage. My CECs, I signed with them a performance contracting on last Friday. So, and coming week, I'll be signing with the chief officers so that you hold them accountable. Because you see, while you expect money to come from the treasury, but there is certain preparations you have to make. And many times you find that the chief officers don't make those preparations. They want the money to be received fast. And that, again, is wrong. Because you should be able to plan. By the time you're getting the money, even the procurement process, you should have done it. And that's where accountability becomes a key issue. And I agree that without holding these chief officers and the senior people in the government to account, then they just take it as a laissez-faire matter, and people just stay there and years go and they move out.
You've been in leadership now for a while. What would you say is the irrefutable effect that sound leadership brings to bear on the people? I'm asking it in this context. Yeah. I could say the people of Vihiga are very unique in that they accepted to vote for a person who's refusing to give them money.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I would also argue that they were waiting for somebody who could actually stand by certain values which they hold, but they hadn't found one. So when this one came along, they said, okay,
take it.
This is what we've been waiting for. Thank you, we are going to follow. So my question, the irrefutable influence that positive leadership has.
I think the influence the leader should have to have confidence of the people is to have very straightforward principle. People must trust you and must believe in you. And you must live by your word. Your actions must actually show what you say is what you do. So like for me, as much as I don't do what other politicians do, but I make it clear that as a leader, I'll give the people the right advice and show them the right thing to do and say, this is how we will do it, and I will take the lead, but you must also play your role.
Your role. Climate change is a conversation that comes into the devolved units agenda all the time. We saw that with the biting drought that happened over the last 4 years, that things became really thick for counties, specific counties in particular. What is the climate change agenda? And I know that conversations will be had around such an eldorate this week, but what is it, and why is it then important that the devolved units get involved in this conversation?
Climate change is probably, I would say, the one single most threat that mankind is facing today, because it threatens the survival of mankind on this planet. And this is a long-term process. It's a process that has taken a long time to reach where we are, the so-called global warming. And this global warming is as a result of our own human activities, which actually are interpreted as development. So in our development agenda, as we develop, as we bring industries and so on, we have over years destabilized the normal functioning systems of the planet that makes life possible on this planet. Therefore, the level where we have reached, it needs a concerted effort globally so that we can confront this matter globally, the way we did COVID-19. So climate change is such an important matter at the county level, because climate change affects people most at the local level, and particularly women, children, people living with disability. Because why does it do so? Because it is affecting the climatic weather systems. And you know, our production systems are based on weather.
Yeah.
So when we have droughts, there's no food production. When we have floods, we have destruction of property, infrastructure. So climate change is a matter of concern, and it's a matter that has to be addressed globally, regionally, nationally, and locally. And I'm happy that Kenya has taken a major stride in climate change matters. And I would want to say that we are a leader on the continent in terms of climate matters. When it comes to legal framework, we have both policy and legal frameworks that we have already formulated. When it comes to climate change implementation plans, we have them. One of the key problems we have had, and that is a question that we all know in this country, is implementation. Implementation has been the issue. So as a country, we must take climate change very seriously. And I want to say that for us in the Council of Governors, I'm the chair of Environment and Climate Change. And I'm proud and happy to say that in the last 3 or 4 years, we have been able to influence all the 47 counties to come up with the policy and legal frameworks are in place. We have made it mandatory that every county must have a directorate of climate change. So we have directorate of climate change. We made a very deliberate effort to say that in our legal framework, we must make it mandatory that part of our budget must go to address climate change issues, because climate change issues are cross-cutting.
Yeah.
So in each of our 47 legal frameworks, we have agreed that 2 to 3% of our budget should be dedicated to climate change mitigation and adaptation measures that aim to have resilience in terms of dealing with climate change. So that we have put in place, and I would say that that's a very great step, because the biggest problem globally on climate change debate has been the funding.
Yes.
So we have said for us, because climate change is affecting us, we cannot wait for funding. We
have
must
to do
fund.
something now.
We must do something.
Our
So at
time
the
is-
county
yeah.
level, we are doing something.
Our time is winding down. Really quick